know that the Inglis Ready to Race sale culminates in a 2-year-old breezing up and then going through the Riverside Ring this year on October 12. But like all racehorses, the process begins with educating these youngsters to be ridden under saddle. In this episode of Inglis Insights, we visit Will Forrester's new property in Bowral as he talks us through the journey from a yearling into a racehorse.
I love very much the early education. Working with the young horses, they're so impressionable, and I think it's we're in a really good position to influence them in a way that could affect their entire career. I've been breaking in and pre-training racehorses in the Sydney area for 10 years now. I did a course at Marcus Oldham for a year in Victoria, and when I first moved over here I was working for Shane Rose at Bimbadeen Park, and then from there I sort of wanted to go out on my own and set up my own business, and so moved down to the Highlands, and that's where we find ourselves now. What we do as breakers and pre-trainers, I guess the early educators of the horses, including the stud farms, but we're taking the horses in racing. We take them from a yearling sale, basically teaching them everything about being ridden, and barriers, track work, other horses, basically getting them ready to go to the trainers. So it's a very sort of short time frame that we have them to do and instill a lot of knowledge. Being ready to handle a racetrack environment mentally is almost more or as important for the 2-year-olds. So I think that's very much a big focus, especially of ours, is trying to prepare them more mentally to be ready to go to the races. This is a colt that I purchased out of the Inglis Classic sales. He's by Pariah out of a Denman mare, Lady Denman. This is how I would start every horse that comes to my property to get broken in. First day they come to the round yard, and then basically we start establishing basics from there. The first thing I want him to understand about going forward and start responding to pressure and body pressure from me, and then from there we'll start introducing the girth and and building on that. I just want to go and not do a whole lot of this, but I just want him to understand what I'm asking and then have him respond. And once he's done and he's understood and he's working well off what I'm trying to establish here, then we'll move on to the next stage. So this is I guess one of the very first stages of breaking in. So this is what we call a roller, is a simulation of the girth, and then it has a few rings up on top which we use in the next stage of long reining, where we're basically simulating the reins a rider would hold. So everything gets a roller on the first day, which will be, as far as we know, this is their first introduction to having a girth around their belly. And I don't tend to get too hung up on their first reactions especially to a lot of things. I think they're going to react in different ways, or they're going to make mistakes, and that's sort of where they learn. So yeah, I don't get too hung up on the first reaction. One reason why I do like to just establish, even just for 2 laps of me sending them around and teaching them to lunge, well then they go, well, they know that, so if there is an overreaction to the roller, you can sort of quickly teach them to go forward, and then they get hold of the hang of things pretty quickly from there. Long reining, basically, where for the first time the horse is going to learn what pressure on the bit and learning to steer, stop, all that sort of stuff. So basically we're simulating the reins that a rider would use. So we're sort of just adding a few components and in preparation for the first sort of ride. So I like to do this 2 to 3 times prior to sort of riding them under saddle. I'm directing the horse from the ground, and then obviously controlling the 2 long reins as if I was on his back, holding the reins. As we go through, the first thing again, I just want him to go forward and get used to it, get used to the reins, and then once he's settled, then we'll start to go and bring in the left and right. So I don't want them perfect by the end of it, but I just want them so that when I transfer and it's me up on top, they've sort of got a bit of an idea about it, and then we just keep developing it once under saddle. If they're going through fluently by sort of around day 4, they should be ready for me introducing the saddle. But again, like in the early stages, we don't sort of rush. It depends on the individual and how they're taking to it. Some need a little longer, but then some are going through quite fluently. So I work roughly about that timeline, and then we'll introduce the saddle and then introduce me on top as well. The saddle that I use for the first few rides of my breakers is a stock saddle or a fender saddle in this case, as this one is. It sort of seats you in if one does want to get a bit frisky on the first couple of rides, but I personally really like using them because they're a bit bigger and they make a bit more noise than a normal track pad. So trying to get the horses as desensitised and calm and composed as possible, I think it's quite a good saddle to use, because if they're really happy with something like this, then transition to a track pad should be pretty fluent. There's quite a few components involved, like to get to this sort of process in the breaking in process, but once I've sort of done the basics and I've taught the horse a bit about turning, gotten it used to the saddle, gotten them used to me jumping up over and being up above them and over their backs, then the next stage is obviously moving into riding under saddles, and then from there we sort of work on confidence as well and keep developing the skills from there. On all the babies obviously, and you'll see I carry a whip, I use this a lot every now and again, if just for light little cues, but it's quite good for rubbing them all over and getting them used to being touched all over their bodies while you're on, which is just another good desensitisation sort of tool. Move to that next stage where we're in the round yard, the horse is comfortable, we bring the older horse in and get them used to being in and around the other horses, the other rider up above them on the other horse. So then basically from going from the round yard, they've got a fair bit of confidence about what we're going to ask them when we take that outside into the track or around the farm. By the end of the second week, we're riding out and starting to go around the track. It's quite baby steps, and we don't ask miracles of them first up. But then from there, week 3, week 4, week 5 is just very much repetition and practice, and starting to add in other things like the barriers and that sort of stuff. This colt here is by Headwater. He's one we purchased out of the 2020 Inglis yearling sale at Riverside. So today he's a lovely big colt, he's grown, he's done a lot of stuff very quickly, so just to mix up his routine every now and again, we'll just give them a day where they'll come out, they'll be under saddle but with no rider on, and just do a day off the pony, nice little light trot, hack out, just to mix up the routine for them. When you think about a horse's career, the 6-7 years of its race career, but then the rest of its life was an eventer or some form of sport horse afterwards. The time that we spend with them, in that early education process is, it's quite crucial.